Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. My name is Julie Elmore with the RCPP National Team, working with you at the national level for the Natural Resources Conservation Service. We have about 418 people registered for this event, and it looks like 197 of you are with us right now. So we are going to take a little bit of time to let that number tick up just a touch. Here on the RCPP team, we're known for our promptness with our office hours. We always get started right at the top of the hour, but we do understand that some of you are signing on and learning the ropes, so we'll give you just another moment to come on with us today. For those of you already here, we do appreciate your promptness and want to let you know that this event will be recorded, and it does take us time to process the video and release it because it has to go through a number of regulatory requirements to make sure it's ready for release, which includes proper closed captioning and other federal requirements for that. So just know that we are recording, and it will be available as soon as we can possibly get it to you on the RCPP website. Okay, we're up to 230, so that's a little over half. Today is June the 30th, 2026, and I will be the moderator and also helping at the very end with questions. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a few announcements. The chat, the camera, and the mic for you is going to be turned off for the webinar participants for the duration of this presentation. So we're not going to be doing verbal questions today, but we do want to encourage you to use the Q&A box throughout the presentation and drop your questions there. We're going to try to answer as many questions as we have time for during the Q&A session at the very end of the presentation. If we do not answer all of the questions today, we will be providing follow-up responses in an updated frequently asked questions, and that will take maybe a week or two to finalize the Q&A document. Our next webinar is the RCPP easement webinar scheduled for July the 9th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern, and the registration link is on the RCPP website under the How to Apply RCPP website. We have a welcome slide reserved for Jerry Rayner, the Director of NRCS Financial Assistance Program Division, if he's with us today. We were not expecting him due to some scheduling constraints, but I just wanted to see if he was joining, just in case. Okay. With that, we'll just roll right along. The RCPP Classic and AFA Notice of Funding announcement has officially hit the street. We have up to $310 million for 2026 RCPP Classic and AFA combined. So that is a total of $310 for both awards. Proposals are accepted from all 50 states, the Caribbean area, which includes Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the U.S. territories in the Pacific Island areas such as Guam, American Samoa, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. Again, the funding availability of $310 million does cover both RCPP Classic and AFA combined. This amount differs from the appropriated amount, which many of you can see when you read the Farm Bill and the OBBA, of $425 million. And this is due to off-the-top required expenditures such as sequestration and operational costs that reduce the total available funding. I want to note that there is a maximum project funding of $10 million this year and a minimum project funding amount of $250,000. NRCS can make up to 15 AFA awards, and there's going to be a short turnaround for obligations. NRCS must receive the proposals by 4:59 Eastern Standard Time on August 24th, 2026. Just leaving that slide up for a few of you. I know you're probably taking quite a bit of notes. That maximum funding amount does include financial assistance and TA combined. And we are going to be doing the one agreement process, or the consolidated agreement process, which will be allow us to achieve short-term programmatic partnership agreement obligations. The one agreement PPA section will outline partner and NRCS responsibilities and the overall budget plan for federal funds, partner contributions, and the outcome reporting deliverables. The consolidated agreement will also include supplemental agreements section, and will define the partner technical assistance for project management and implementation deliverables, with the NTE budgets and valuation methods to obligate all of the project funding. The PPAs and supplemental agreements will be modified to make adjustments as needed to address on-the-ground realities. There are some key differences this time from the previous notices of fundings. Like I mentioned in the previous slide, the maximum federal funding share of the project is reduced to $10 million from the previous $25 million. This is to ensure more manageable size projects are able to be funded and setting up the partnerships for success. There's an increased on the de minimis rate for indirect costs used as a contribution to 15%. And this will match the USDA general terms and conditions for mutual interest agreements for partners that do not have an approved NCRA. Proposal narrative responses questions reduced and clarified to help partners focus on real project outcomes and allow NRCS to better assess proposals on the merits of putting farmers first and potential for delivering outcomes based on the program priorities. The number of questions have been reduced to 10 for classic and 11 for AFA proposals. And I know for you, any of you out there that have written grants, that is a welcome change. It also allows for greater flexibility for certified entities under the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program to use the certification for RCPP easements, particularly with alternative funding arrangement projects. And all newly selected projects will utilize a streamlined consolidated agreement and negotiate and execute program partnership agreements and supplemental agreements, reducing administrative burden on the partners to begin project implementation by obligating the projects immediately. This was previously called the Interim 1 Agreement, and now we're calling it a Consolidated Agreement. And I just wanted to state that there are some changes with unmanned aircraft systems due to the Executive Memo M2602. The decision has been made to disallow funding for drone purchase or usage for various FY26 NFOs as the agencies work to meet the requirements for this provision, where federal funding would be used to cover these costs. Okay, so how to submit a great RCPP proposal.
Greetings, folks. My name is Eric Beardsley with the RCPP team. RCPP helps solve producer-identified conservation problems. It does this by combining NRCS funding and technology with partner capacity and resources. Strong projects start with a clear producer problem, such as degraded soil health impacts on production or inefficient irrigation. They show partners are ready to deliver planning, design, and field support on a project-wide scale. Good proposals commit to measured outcomes, like what changed in the project area because of acres treated or reductions of runoff, for example. In plain language, authorities are the legal rules that specify the conservation activities NRCS can fund. RCPP draws its eligibility from existing Farm Bill program authorities for activities like land management, rentals, easements, or watershed work, but it does not adopt those programs' specific operating rules or templates. Partners who are unfamiliar with the underlying authorities should coordinate early with the state conservationist or RCPP coordinator where the project is headquartered to ensure activities proposed in the project are allowed and well framed. RCPP funds can pay for conservation on the ground, for technical assistance that directly supports producer contracts, and for the management and reporting needed to document the results. Technical assistance means the practical work of conservation planning, practice design, field checks, and the contracting support tied to producers. Because RCPP is not a grant program, costs must directly support conservation delivery. Funds cannot be used for research, long-term staffing, startup costs, or producer sign-up inducements, or partner overhead. In Classic, NRCS contracts directly with producers and provides most of the technical assistance, while partners focus on outreach, measurement, and supplemental resources. In AFA, the partner takes on all of the technical assistance and either installs the practices on behalf of an eligible producer or reimburses producers who get the work done on their own. NRCS only retains a small non-delegable task role, such as performing eligibility determinations and environmental compliance sign-off. Practically, that means NRCS Classic or RCPP Classic relies on NRCS systems for much of the program administration, whereas AFA requires the partner to run its own administrative and financial systems suitable for reimbursable activities. AFA is a reimbursement only program and partners must prepare accordingly. In an AFA project, the lead partner must be able to cover costs up front and then seek reimbursement once milestones are achieved or deliverables are completed or documented expenses are submitted and approved. There's no advance payments. This structure gives partners more control over delivery, but it demands sufficient cash flow capacity to float planning, design, fieldwork, and producer support for weeks or months prior to reimbursement. All payments to partners must reflect the actual cost of delivering approved practices or services, and every reimbursable activity must meet NRCS requirements at approved rates. Actual cost means the amount the partner truly paid, not an estimate or an average, and the payment eligibility attachment in the supplemental agreement sets the detailed standards for what is allowable and how documentation be reviewed. Treat that attachment as your billing rulebook. Partner contributions are not match. Partner contributions are the resources partners bring because the project requires them, such as staff time devoted to outreach or planning, use of equipment, or direct cash, and they are not the same as match. Match is only required for easement purchases and watershed plan implementation. Contributions must be reasonable, trackable, and tied directly to supporting the project. There is no required percentage. The emphasis is on the value of the contribution as it adds to the delivery of the local program. Contribution equals success. Successful RCP projects usually feature a well-balanced partnership with clearly defined roles. An experienced lead partner, locally grounded organizations with strong producer relationships, technical education or academic partners, and service organizations that will help with planning, implementation, and follow-up. This clarity of roles and the breadth of capacity makes it more likely that practices will be planned, installed on time, and that outcomes can be measured credibly. RCPP classic projects can use customized payment schedules that include rates up to 100% of the NRCS payment schedule rates to fit local conditions and encourage producer participation. If a needed scenario does not exist in your state, it can often be adopted from another state. Early coordination with the state payment schedule team helps partners ensure alignment and avoid delays in later agreement negotiations. The AFA projects do not use payment schedules. Instead, partners define how they will contract with producers or deliver practices directly and then seek reimbursement for actual costs. NRCS payment schedules can serve as a reference point for reasonableness, but reimbursed costs must reflect the actual cost and be defensible. A practical check is what we call the state conservationist red face test. Would the state conservationist be comfortable defending that cost publicly? Funding pools. Applicants must choose either a state multi-state funding pool or the critical conservation areas pool. Critical conservation area proposals must address at least one critical conservation area priority resource concern and must operate within a single CCA. Proposals cannot cross CCA boundaries. CCAs are designated regions in statute with targeted conservation priorities. So proposals should tie activities directly to those priorities. Funding is evenly split between the two pools, making the initial choice important for competitiveness. Tips for a strong partnership. The strongest proposals are grounded in producer-driven needs and demonstrate that the partnership has technical and managerial capacity to deliver and align partner contributions with real gaps the project needs filled. They are also specify measurable benchmarks and outcomes targets so reviewers can see how conservation gains will be achieved, not just what is intended. Classic proposals benefit from early coordination with the state conservationist and state RCPP coordinator, while AFA proposals must demonstrate deep familiarity with NRCS standards, planning, eligibility, and environmental compliance, along with the ability to manage reimbursable financial and technical assistance. How to apply? Proposals must be submitted through the RCPP portal, and applicants will need a level 2 e-authentication or a login.gov credential. Because credentialing and multi-factor authentication can take quite a bit of time, partners should start those steps early and plan for internal testing of the portal prior to the submission window. Instructions are available on the NRCS website, and early engagement with the state conservationist and state RCPP coordinator helps align project design to state needs and policies. Proposals are evaluated for classic using a scorecard that is classic proposals are reviewed and scored by state subject matter experts using a scorecard. And then they're evaluated by the national RCPP team for eligibility and alignment with agency priorities. AFA proposals are reviewed by a national subject matter expert panel with input from state conservationists. After all reviews are complete, the project's branch chief will develop a draft award slate, which is reviewed by leadership, including the deputy chief for programs, the financially assisted programs division director, before going to the chief for final selection. Selections are expected within 60 days of the August 24, 2026 submission deadline, and consolidated agreements are targeted for obligation by the end of November 2026. For fiscal year 2026 proposals that address one or more priority topics that will be prioritized, including the land health, soil health projects, producer-focused conservation support, precision agriculture, and projects led by Indian tribes. Up to $30 million is specifically reserved for tribal partnership agreements, and the unused set-aside funds will return to the general pool. Frame your proposals so that its activities are clearly tied to one and more of these priorities and make the outcomes easy to verify. For more information, visit the How to Apply page. There's a link in the NFO, and there are many documents that can assist with answering or responding to the proposal are available. Now it's our question and answer period. Please use the Q&A module within the webinar.
All right, thank you so much, Eric. Give me just a moment, folks, to transition to our question and answer portion of this presentation. And again, we will do our absolute best to get to each and every question. We are also going to release these questions after they go through some 508 compliance view process. So we have learned not to overpromise on exactly how long that is going to take, but I assure you that we will do that at our earliest capacity. In fact, a few of us are not leaving for July 4th holiday until we get that done on our side. So, right, question 1. It is related to partner eligibility. So can a landowner be a partner? Mike, do you want to help out with the answers? You ready for that? While we wait on Mike, I'll go ahead and answer that question. Individual producers are not eligible to propose projects. Non-governmental organizations and non-federal agencies can propose and lead projects. If a partner organization member or staff are a producer, they can participate in the project as long as there is a conflict of interest that is mitigated. Okay. Are we going to be able to share the slide deck? It is understandable that it takes time for the video to be produced, but can the slide deck be shared? And the answer is yes. We need to ensure that all documents are 508 compliant, and this may take some time. So I was anticipating that question even before I read it. It does take some time. For Indian tribes, does the entity applying have to be a tribe, or can partners apply on behalf of tribal partners? Mike, do you want to take this?
I sure will. And sorry,
Okay.
I didn't get to my mute button fast enough for
You're
that
fine.
prior one. So the 30 million set aside for tribes is intended for tribal governments or tribal operated entities as the lead partner for the proposal.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you help me understand why the certified entity designation only applies to AFA agreements and not classic projects? Mike, would you like that one as well?
Sure. AFAs are intended to have less NRCS involvement overall, and allowing for certified entities or certified entity designations to be used in AFAs is a new option that we're using to really serve as a differentiation between what entity held easements between classic and alternative funding arrangements can be. So more detail might be given, or this question could be posed also to the particular easement staff next week on the easement specific webinar that our easement programs division will be hosting on July 9th. So I encourage you to attend that for more specific information.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, we have a question coming in on the indirect rate. Will the NCRA indirect rates greater than 15% be honored and accepted? Eric, do you want that one? If not, I can take it.
I had to get to the mute button. To what? Could you repeat the question?
Sure. Will the NCRA indirect rates greater than 15% be honored and accepted?
If you have a NCRA rate that's current and viable, that will be honored. So you would have to submit your NCRA agreement to get that rate.
Correct. So partners providing technical assistance as a project contribution may count some or all of their related indirect costs as contributions, consistent with the notice of funding limits. Approved negotiated indirect rates, which is what NCRA stands for those of you out there with the not familiar with the acronyms, and actually may be used. So do work with your state contact to calculate the maximum amount of indirect costs also on that side of the contributions. Okay, will entities that hold conservation easements be eligible for reimbursement of TAI activities? And by TAI, we mean technical assistance for implementation activities. This is going to be pre-acquisition negotiations, post-closing activities, or is this considered a conflict of interest? Mike, would you like that one?
Yeah, so I'm not sure about considering it as a conflict of interest, but just from the program, anything that is typically within ASAP, agricultural land easements, is an entity responsibility in working with those landowners, pre-acquisition, doing those due diligence activities, doing all those negotiations. That's all an entity's responsibility, and that carries into RCPP as well and is not eligible for TAI. Those expenses can be counted as contribution, however.
Great, thank you so much. And for those of you that are absolutely brand new, contribution is what you are bringing to the project in terms of how we're going to work together. So if those are very important activities to accomplish, you can count them as your overall contribution to the project. Okay. What does it mean that RCPP doesn't fund, quote, ongoing positions? Eric?
RCPP funds are used to pay for staff time to complete eligible activities. So it's not like a grant where you're saying we want a block of money to fund a position for 5 years. The way RCPP works is you identify how much it costs for your staff per unit of work, and we pay the actual cost for that, achieving that activity.
Correct. Yes, we cannot stress enough that RCPP does not fund positions. RCPP funding supports the implementation of on-the-ground conservation activities. So if you think about all the hard work we do out there with our conservation activities, we always reimburse at the time of completion. We operate the same way with our technical assistance payments. We actually ask that you complete the work first. So you can imagine it would be very difficult to have payments and payroll for ongoing positions. We do like to focus our funding directly on the work accomplished for the project. And those payments are reimbursable on the actual documented allowable costs. Okay. For AFA type projects, can contractors, example, engineering, TSPs be reimbursed for actual costs or only at NRCS costs? Mike.
Yes, actual costs of the expenses for implementation can be used with AFA projects, with or without using certified TSPs as well. For AFA projects, that's pretty typical actually, and actually in limited situations it can be used in Classic as well.
Hey, thank you. Is it required to have a proposed project in one of the RCPP critical conservation areas? No, it is not. You do not have to have an RCPP project in one of the critical conservation areas. State and multi-state projects are not required to address specific critical conservation areas. Any project that will not address what we call a CCA priority is suitable for a state or a multi-state funding pool. However, if it is within those boundaries and it does focus on those CCA priorities, it is in your best interest to apply under that CCA area, that critical conservation area. Is providing stipends to farmers transitioning to sustainable practices an eligible expense? And this particular question was asking about stipends up to $25,000 a year. So no, RCPP is not an incentives program like that. Okay, looks like we are getting to the end of our typed in questions. I'm going to give it just a few more moments. We have some admins behind the scenes doing their best to make sure that we deliver the answers as best we can to you. And I'm only able to read what they have posted. So if you have asked a question in the chat, we are just waiting on that to flow our way. And again, if we do not get to your question during this webinar recording, we understand there are lots of questions coming from our admin, and they are struggling. We will take time to answer each and every one of these questions, and we will post them. Oh, I just received a message that there are 7 pages of questions. Working on them. Sorry for the dead air. Okay. Right. Here's a common one. Is each state limited to how many RCPP applications they send up to national? No, none of the states are limited to how many applications that they send to us to rank. But states will rank the classic projects internally. And we do highly recommend each of you to build a relationship with your state RCPP coordinator and work with them. They may also delegate some of your questions to the broader team at the state office, or even make some phone calls down to the field office level, just to make sure that the partnership part of the RCPP program is going to work for everyone involved. We certainly do not want folks to go to all the trouble to write an NFO if the viability of that partnership is not strong. So that is why we encourage each of you to really work with your state. Right. How should the state conservationist questionnaire be included in the grant proposal? So it is just, as a former grant writer before I came to the RCPP team, I just want to stress that this is a partnership proposal document. We love to say repeatedly that RCPP is not a grant. In my world previously in the nonprofit, grants meant we were given a big old check and we posed in front of a group of people, and it was in the newspaper that that money was coming to us and it went into our bank accounts. RCPP is a program partnership agreement and not a grant. Just to clarify that part of your question. But the state conservationist questionnaire is designed so that states and partners can use that question as a guide to ensure that the project is viable. The questions really do help guide the state conservationist or whomever he or she has delegated that task to make sure that we are all understanding what the program is capable of and what your project ideas are, not as a means to preclude participation, but just as a means to make sure that we can all work together. We are limited as a federal program to doing certain aspects of project implementation with our dollars. And we also do not want you to go to that kind of trouble to propose if our limits are going to be significant to your ideas. Just a moment. I'm catching up on the written questions. Okay, can a partner be awarded both a classic and an AFA project at the same time? That.
I'll get that one, Julie.
Okay, great.
If they do different things. So some folks try to hedge their bet and submit a classic and an AFA for the exact same project. AFAs are evaluated. One of the big evaluation questions in them is, how is a project better carried out using AFA than RCPP? So if you have a project that would be better suited to an AFA type delivery and a separate project that's not doing the same thing in the same footprint, that's better suited to an RCPP classic, then that would be a case where you might submit proposals for both NFOs.
Thank you, Eric. All right, there's a question asking, could we review the match and contribution considerations and requirements? Yes. Let me just again put on my former hat as someone who worked in the nonprofit sector. Match is something that we use as a vocabulary word often. And in our CS vocabulary, a match is specifically geared towards the money put towards a conservation easement. A contribution is the money that you as a lead partner or a participating partner are going to bring to the table for the partnership and the project to become viable. I do know from many, many years of experience on the national team and working at the state level that those two vocabulary words can be very difficult to understand because of how often we say the word match in our lexicon in the nonprofit world. But match is specifically geared towards the cash dollars needed to close an easement. So for those of you out there, and we do encourage you to join us again on July 9th if you want to have conservation easements as part of your RCPP project. Okay, we had one question about BABA. Is there a BABA requirement this year? And the answer is no, that no longer applies. How specifically measurable do objectives need to be? Does acres treated count as a deliverable?
I'll take it.
Okay.
Outcomes are what changes in the project area because of all the acres treated. So there would need to, you'd come to the proposal with an idea of a problem that exists in the project area that you can measure, and you're going to propose carrying out conservation activities. It's going to treat acres, and the result of treating all those acres is going to change that benchmark condition to a more desirable condition, and that's the outcome we're interested in having proposed. What will change because of the acres treated?
Thank you, Eric. Here's a commonly asked question. Is purchasing agricultural technology equipment, such as soil moisture sensors, an eligible cost under the RCPP program? If yes, which program would that fall under? Mike, do you want to help out with? Okay, go ahead, Eric.
I can get on. Equipment can be an eligible cost if it's necessary to delivering the conservation practices or measuring the outcomes. And it all depends on the context of how it's going to be used. And it would be technical assistance funding under both our CPP Classic and AFA.
And just remember, folks, we will not be using ag tech drones during this particular announcement due to the executive order on drones. We are still trying to, as an agency, get our policy aligned with that executive order. Okay, can you explain the difference between enhancement and implementation technical assistance dollars?
Enhancement technical assistance dollars are for project management. That would include producer engagement, such as outreach efforts to interest participants, negotiating agreements with NRCS, monitoring and reporting outcomes. Technical assistance for implementation is the direct planning work with producers who have contracts. So it'd be doing plans, practice designs, providing assistance to them and laying out the installation and checking out the practice after it's installed to make sure it was installed according to specifications. That's the implementation assistance.
Thank you, Eric. Yes, an easy way to remember it is that the enhancement or the technical assistance E is for your project level work, and the implementation, the technical assistance to implement, is at the producer level. And for those of you familiar with our 9 steps of planning, that is how we work directly with the producers at the farm level. And I always advise for you to pull up in Google NRCS's 9 steps of planning, and have that handy while you're trying to think about how to split your project level work versus your producer technical assistance. In a classic project, we can assist with the technical assistance on the implementation side. And in an AFA, you'll want to very much understand the difference between those two, because you will be taking on the majority of that work. Still waiting, and the admin said that there are many, many, many questions. So we are likely not going to get to all of them today, but we are going to do our best. They have to copy paste them into a document for us to read because of the nature of this particular program. Okay, I mentioned in the presentation that there would be 10 to 11 questions that must be addressed as part of the proposal development. And someone asked where those can be found. We have a how to apply page on our NRCS RCPP website. And one of the key steps with that how to apply is making sure that you have an e-authorization. That will get you into our Salesforce portal, and you can then see the application process unfold before you. One thing that was not mentioned in a slide is that if you have any problems whatsoever while you are in the application portal, there is a need help button, and our software developers are at your service from about 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to answer your questions as you go. They forward those to us, so we jump right on to answer as many questions as we can to make sure that that application process is as seamless as it can be for you. But you have to click into and register to see those 10 to 11 questions, and you fill them out. As a former grant writer, I'll just give some unsolicited advice out there. I would certainly advise you to copy paste them and work on them with your team. We know that putting together a proposal can take many, many hours refining your responses. And that is the actual questions to answer is in the RCPP portal.
On the how to apply to RCPP page, there is a downloadable partner guide to submitting proposals, and it includes the narrative questions that you would be answering in the portal.
Thanks, Eric. What about that? Okay, multiple priority topics were listed, such as land management, soil health, being farmer focused. Will proposals that address multiple priority topics receive different or higher ranking than those that address only one of the priority topics? Or will the number of priority topics addressed not have an influence on the ranking? Eric, do you want that one?
Sure. So proposals are ranked for our AFA, 11 different narrative questions, and the priority topics are the way they're going to work is if you have a handful of projects that have technical scores across all 10 ranking narrative questions for Classic or all 11 for AFA. It's the projects that clearly demonstrate that there is producer demand for, and they have a project to address those priorities versus just listing them. So it's the quality of what the project will do, as well as the number of those priorities it will address. And when the word prioritization means the top leadership making decisions, we'll look at closely scored projects and say, well, this one doesn't address any of our national priorities, and this one addresses two. They'll probably prioritize the one that addresses those priorities. And we cannot say for sure any more than that. But that's how things are used in a qualitative way.
Thank you, Eric. For RCPP Classic, of the 25% technical assistance, how much can the partner request to administer and provide technical assistance? So this is something we negotiate with the lead states, and it is up to 25%. And that will include your technical assistance for the project, and also will include the technical assistance you're going to need to implement the practices. It also includes what NRCS might also need to implement the project as well. In prior RCPPs, the lead partner has developed their own ranking sheet. However, the NFO for 2026 says that the RCPP Classic, all agreements and producer contract applications involving financial assistance will typically be ranked using NRCS ranking process. How much input will the lead partner have in the ranking process for applications in the Classic RCPP? Mike, would you like that one?
Yeah. So this actually is not new. We may have clarified and changed the language a little bit, but for RCPP Classic, they've always used the NRCS ranking process. The partner should have a significant impact on what the ranking is, with the sort of priorities and questions and different things that are within that ranking. And that's part of the negotiation and should be part of there's a specific exhibit to the programmatic partnership agreement called the land management exhibit. And it also has, for in the case of rental activities, the rental exhibit. And that is where it really needs to be spelt out during those negotiations between the partner and the state on what are those things that should go into the ranking. That sets up the framework from the beginning in the partnership agreement. And then getting into actual implementation, developing specific questions in those things, the state should be working with the partner on those. Now, I will add that the option for bundling projects, so meeting some sort of specific criteria that the partner specifies, can boost those rankings, and that could be based on a partner sort of ranking sheet that goes along with that for those applications as well. But we've always used that for Classic. They always go through our CART ranking for ranking, and the state just needs to work closely with the partner on that. But it does all go through our system.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, I've come down to my favorite question, so I'm going to answer this one myself. We get this a lot. Would submitting a project that lies within a single state be seen as less competitive than those covering multiple states? I can assure you that your project boundary should be what you need it to be to make outcomes occur. If you need multiple states to make sure that those outcomes occur, please, by all means, select multiple states. But some of the best projects that finish before the 5-year mark spend all the money like that they said that they were going to do. And really, we can showcase incredible results from the outcomes, have a fairly small geographic boundary. Part of our CPP pillars are, what are you going to accomplish within a geographic boundary? So please do not stretch yourselves too thin out there just for the understanding that you might be more competitive if you stretch yourself into other states. Now, we recognize the reason we have the state and multi-state boundaries is because we recognize that some of our wildlife do not recognize our state boundaries. They will migrate, and we have some great projects recognizing that our wildlife move and that they want to put conservation practices on the ground throughout multiple states. Those are great. What we're looking at when we think about the competitiveness of that is, what are you going to do to accomplish your goals and those outcomes? If you need those multi-state boundaries, by all means, we are looking at those outcomes. I am also at heart a water quality scientist, so I love a good watershed project where you're actually looking at potentially improving sediment in a watershed. And that helps the farmers, that helps the citizens within that watershed. You know, sometimes we have a watershed that doesn't recognize state boundaries. And, you know, we certainly allow you to go into 2 states. But for the most part, some great watershed projects can be within the state boundary. So we would like for you to choose your project based on what you think you can accomplish based on that geographic location. So, and then just a funny one for the funny sake, because I've been at this job for a while. We had a watershed in Alaska that went into Canada. We can't do that work in Canada. We can only spend federal dollars in the United States. So my comment back to the state was, oh, Canada, we can't do that one. So do try to keep your boundaries to the United States if you can, please. Thank you. All right. So can you describe the required budgeting in more detail? What are the subcategories of both TA, technical assistance, and financial assistance, and how are those recommended to be scheduled? All right, so we have budgeting in our agreement. And again, this is a budgeting tool is a great way to describe what you were trying to accomplish. So that technical assistance dollars is going to be your project level technical assistance for project management. Again, Google can be your great friend. If you've not taken any kind of project management training, it does a great job outlining all the tasks that are required in project management, such as communication, coordination, meetings. You know, it does take a lot to keep these $1 million projects moving forward. We recognize that. We also recognize that it takes a lot of effort to make sure that you can measure the outcomes so that we can be authentic about what you're accomplishing. So that is considered a technical assistance enhancement budget line item. So if you're going to be measuring, let's see, bird habitat, I know we've got some great new tools out there that will record bird songs. You know, that does require a certain amount of capacity to get the right field technicians out there, the right biologists out there, ornithologists out there, and that's going to have certain costs associated with it that we will consider those to be a project level cost. And then you have the implementation technical assistance to make sure that the seed mixes are right, to make sure that we're implementing according to standards and specs. Sometimes you need folks on the ground during that implementation and construction, and those are more producer specific technical assistance where they're working one-on-one with the producers. The financial assistance is going to cover what we're putting on the ground for those conservation practices. And that handles land management, that handles rentals, that handles entity held easements, and it also handles the US held easements. And again, for the easements, July the 9th is going to be when we host the easement specific webinar for RCPP. So hopefully that answers the question a little more carefully. There was a 2-part component to this question on what will the approach to amendments be under this consolidated agreement. So when we consolidate the agreement into how the umbrella of how we're going to work together and a partnership, that's what we used to call, that's what we called the partnership program agreement. And the supplemental agreement was how we obligated those dollars in specifics, what we could reimburse for and what we couldn't. Now in the consolidated agreement, that is going to be for the development of both the initial working together memorandum of understanding or the project agreement, and then also the obligating documents. So if you need to amend that, it will be the same process where you say, hey, we see a change. We do not need funds here. We need them somewhere else instead. And then that gets submitted to your state. We review it at headquarters, and we will amend that. We're getting those turned around really quickly these days. So it is the same process for that amendment. Are there limits on technical assistance for implementation and technical assistance for enhancement utilization? The only thing we limit is at the 25% mark. We just really want to focus on putting conservation on the ground for American producers. So we really do want to make sure that we are not spending above that 25% threshold on technical assistance. Okay, through a classic, I understand that partners can deliver some technical assistance and land management financial assistance with proper documentation. Is NRCS open to partners delivering technical assistance activities and tasks with a classic? Can you explain how a partner would successfully document or request certain technical assistance and financial assistance tasks that they would like to deliver within a classic approach? Eric, would you like to take that one?
Sure. So in Classic, NRCS delivers the financial assistance through producer contracts. Under certain conditions, a partner can deliver financial assistance through what's called a Type 2 supplemental agreement in a Classic project. That would be where the partner is building infrastructure that's going to support lots of eligible producer contracts. Easy example, because this is what we have quite a few of, are Classic projects where the contributing partner is an irrigation district. They're going to replace some turnouts, or they're going to make some improvements to the irrigation water delivery system that's necessary for producers to implement their contracts to upgrade their irrigation systems from a less efficient system to a more efficient system. That's one example, but that's how a partner can deliver FA under limited circumstances under a Classic project. How you apply for TA, which is the technical assistance, in the proposal, if you have met with your state and you've learned that the field offices in the project area are already overburdened with another program, and your partnership has qualified people who can carry out conservation planning, practice design, and checkout, that's what you would request for TAI in a Classic, is the funds to cover the cost of those staff working one-on-one with producers to do the planning, design, and checkout of practices associated with their RCPP contracts with NRCS.
Thanks, Eric. And just to reiterate, this is an excellent reason to have a great conversation with your lead state office, because they will be able to help you understand the capacity they have in that geographic location that you're thinking about working. And that will really help you know how to target those TA budget line items in partnership with us. It also will help you understand, they do a great job of helping compare and contrast various partner capacities. And, you know, you guys can bring tremendous resources to the table that we do not have. So it's just a wonderful way to begin that conversation at the state level, especially on the classic projects. So thank you so much.
And I'll use this as an opportunity to make a shameless plug for the State Con questionnaire. That's a document that guides that conversation. When you visit with your state conservationist, there's questions on there that kind of walk through these kinds of needs for the project. And I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have that meeting with your state conservationist and or coordinator.
Thank you so much. Right. If federal rules on using drones later change, will a funded project then be allowed to use the drones? Eric, I think you've been requested to handle this one.
It would not. The way I understand it is we would not be changing that under anything selected in this program. But that's not to say that there will become an executive order or other language directing us to do something different. But it is my understanding at this time that we're going forward with this year's projects, not including that as a fundable item.
And from a producer's perspective, could you elaborate on the difference between an incentive and what RCPP could provide? Eric, would you like that one as well?
Yeah. So all of NRCS programs that provide financial assistance for a producer to do conservation activities, that are considered an incentive into themselves as a program. When we say that the funds in an RCPP project cannot be used as producer incentives, that means a partner cannot pay a producer money as an inducement to participate in the program, or they cannot use the RCPP funding to pay producers a stipend. The RCPP funds can pay for the conservation work that was implemented by a producer or on behalf of a producer. It can pay for the management of the project by the partner. So their time doing outreach, their time working with NRCS to develop agreements, their time monitoring and reporting outcomes, and the money can be used to pay for the actual staff costs to do conservation planning, design, and checkout work with the producers.
Great, thank you so much. All right, for the critical conservation areas, which NRCS state coordinator do we reach out to? That's an excellent question, because those critical conservation areas do cover multiple states. There is a contact list per state on the RCPP How to Apply page. We would recommend that you think about where you're going to focus the majority of your outcomes and how you would like to initiate and build your project. And you might want to look at that particular geographic area and try to think where you're going to be doing most of the work. I would start with that state as a contact point, and your state contact will also draw in their peers, and it could potentially be better for you based on what you're doing to use a different state as a lead state than the one where you're going to be doing the majority of the work. Again, that could be due to our own capacity. It could be have a lot to do with the expertise in that particular state. But we do recommend that you probably start with the state where you think the majority of your work will focus within that CCA boundary. Another way you could think about it strategically would be if it is a long project, meaning it covers multiple states in a linear fashion. you might want to try to pick one that is more central rather than one that is way far north or way far south, or if you're working east to west, again, in the middle versus on one side or the other. However, that said, we have had great success with any of the states that you choose. Again, you will be able to find the contact information and start having a dialogue with that RCPP coordinator in that state. There is a list of how to apply, and we do recommend that you go there. All right, there are priority resource concerns identified for the CCAs. Are there priorities for the state and multi-state funding pool? Mike, do you want that one?
Sure. Yeah, there are no priority resource concerns for the state multi-state fund pool. Any and all resource concerns are applicable. However, within your project, you are expected to provide a demonstrable impact through the outcomes you plan to measure on the impact on that particular resource concern or suite of resource concerns that you choose to put into your project.
Thank you, Mike. All right, somebody out there is already experiencing an RCPP portal error. We hate to hear that. We've put in considerable effort over the last year to improve the portal, working out many bugs and kinks. But the question is there an IT person that can help? Absolutely, yes, there is an IT person that can help. It is not me. But I do work with that team, and I really think that they are doing a wonderful job. And I don't give compliments towards IT people very often, but they're fantastic. So if you're in there and you're having trouble at any point in time, there is a need help button. You click that, and that will start a ticket. The more you describe about what is happening, including a screenshot of the error message you're getting, the easier it is for us to resolve. And we meet twice a week on what is happening. We're looking for patterns. We're trying to resolve patterns, but there's always a one-off situation. And we are keeping those tickets below 10 on a daily basis. So we do expect to be able to help you as quickly as we can. Now, if you are a midnight oil burner and you're working on this at 1 a.m., I don't think anybody's going to be able to help you. Our portal assistance team is, again, available. Usually start about 9 a.m. Eastern, and I can sometimes get them all the way to 6 p.m. Eastern, but you might want to aim in that 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for that immediate assistance. I'm happy to take your questions or your complaints about the portal. My email is julie.elmore@usda.gov. And we are absolutely here to help you make sure that you are successful. We do not want our software to be a reason that you are encountering frustration or cannot get through with this process. So it is an all hands on deck when it comes to our software. So please do let us know if you have any trouble at all.
Julie.
Yes.
I'd like to just add that if you are experiencing a problem, by all means, yes, use the help as Julie explained it, but also it's helpful to reach out to your state coordinator and make sure that they're aware that you're having an issue as well, just so that we can make sure that nothing ever falls through the cracks.
Thanks, Mike. All right, can we address conservation of wildlife habitat in RCPP? Mike, would you like that one?
Sure, absolutely. We've got a couple of resource concerns for terrestrial and aquatic habitat that can be chosen as project resource concerns to directly work with wildlife resource concerns. And then there's a whole suite of other relative resource concerns that also could impact wildlife, such as some of the plant composition and health type resource concerns, water quality resource concerns, definitely important to aquatic habitats. So just to keep that in mind, that it's not just limited to, let's say, a habitat resource concern that you could include in a project that is a wildlife focused project.
Yes, and wildlife have excellent outcomes that are easy to define and talk about. And we love to highlight those as a group, both at the state level and the national. So please, if you guys are out there thinking about a wildlife project, certainly reach out to your state. And your state coordinator can even bring in the state biologist or even someone from our tech centers to assist. What is the guidance on how many applications an entity can submit and lead? Mike, would you like that one?
Sure. There are no hard and fast rules here. Obviously, when we're looking through projects, both at a state level and a national level, we're really looking for projects that we feel are the most likely to lead to a successful project in implementation and actually be able to show those outcomes that are proposed within that proposal. So, if we're getting a lot of applications from one particular entity, we may question ability to implement, but also that we have a large gamut of entities who apply from national and international NGOs that have presence in significant areas to local conservation districts or small localized watershed groups. And so that really is going to depend on just the entity's capacity, but no hard and fast rules.
Thank you, Mike. And also, you should also consider your own capacity. We talk about the opportunity cost lost amongst our team quite often. We understand that it does take you time to put these proposals together. That is time away from your own missions. And so that can be sometimes a difficult conversation to have with your board, your leaders, but we certainly do not want you to overextend yourselves in ways that you're not actually able to do your other work as well, just because the money is on the table and available. So do be very strategic. I think the more you focus on one high quality project, the better. We can certainly see that in those proposals as well. Also, a great reminder, we are in a world of AI. I assure you, you know the difference between someone who is writing from the heart and the head and someone who is having AI do the job for them. It is much, much better to spend time on a high quality proposal. If you read 30 of these, you would be the same expert that we are. You can rapidly see when someone is trying to maximize for outcomes and a high quality project versus just get it in by the deadline. So just a quick encouragement for those of you that take great pride in your work. It does show. We still read those and also enjoy reading those. Not to say AI doesn't help. It certainly does. But it makes a big difference when it's your own words. All right. Will there be a frequently asked question document produced and posted online? Yes, there will be. We are required to do this. And we also enjoy reading and answering these questions. It is part of our job that we take great pride in. It just has to go through some 508 compliance. We will put it on the RCPP How to Apply page as soon as we possibly can. I know some of you are online that heard me promising this NFO would be out next week for the last 6 months. So I have learned my lesson, and I am not able to promise when that will be on our website, but I assure you we are going to do our absolute best to get it up there quickly. If you ever have a question that we have not gotten to, do not hesitate to ask your state coordinators. You don't have to wait on the document to arrive on the How to Apply website. It's always a good opportunity to say, hey, I just have a question and I want to shoot it by you. Building that relationship early and often, none of us see your questions as something we don't enjoy. We are appreciative that you're engaged. We are appreciative that you want to participate and be in partnership with us. So please do not wait on the FAQs, but we are required to produce them, and we will. So thank you for that question. Okay. Looks like we're having some follow-up on the NCRA rates. And before I ask the question, knowing that there might be some questions out there about NCRA and de minimis, I had a great Latin teacher, and I even, it's like, oh, well, I cannot remember what de minimis means in Latin, but I got a great primer on it when I Googled it. And I do think that that will help you all understand what that is for. So with that understanding, let me go ahead and ask these two questions that were follow-up on our previously asked NCRA and de minimis questions. So a follow-up about the NCRA rates greater than 15%. Am I understanding correctly that the RCPP program only allows 15% indirect charged to the program? The remaining NCRA indirect would need to be included as a contribution. Eric, would you like to take that?
Sure. As I heard the question, I believe they're correct. The 15% NCRA rate applies to folks who do not have an approved NCRA, a negotiated indirect cost rate with a federal agency. So either you have a NCRA rate that you can use to get to count as contribution, your indirect costs for work that you're being paid for using RCPP funds. If you don't have a federal NCRA rate, the current NCRA rate is 15%.
Thank you. Yes.
So Julie, I actually want to add on
Mike.
to that and clarify.
I knew you would. Go ahead.
We need to make sure that we're clear on something that's in here is RCPP program only allows 15% indirect charge to the program. No administrative indirect costs may be charged to the program. That is statutorily prohibited. So you cannot, no matter what the agreements are, we cannot reimburse for indirect costs under the current statute. What we're talking about here is strictly contribution. What can be counted as contribution is either an approved NCRA rate, whatever that might be, 12%, 45%. I don't know if any NCRAs are that high, but if one exists, we'll accept it at that high. But without a NCRA, what we're saying is you can apply up to 15% of indirect costs as contribution.
And
I'm hoping that cleared things up.
Well, we still got to make sure that you're saying it's what you can count as contribution is only the money, the indirect costs associated with delivering something you're receiving TA money for. That's what the NFO says.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. And just to speak to those of you that might be brand new with us and not know what any of that means, I like to say that do your best to put forward real work on the ground and bring that as a contribution to the table. We do understand that there are operating costs that exist to make really high quality work happen. But we are in an environment where our money comes from Congress and the executive branch, and they would like to see that done as efficiently as possible. Okay, so part of the RCPP intent is to, quote, solve problems for producers. Where documenting environmental outcomes is difficult because of the long-term nature of monitoring methodologies, are outcome metrics geared towards solving problems around core efficiency or reducing downtime considered potential measures of outcomes? Eric, would you like that one?
Sure, yeah, around it's geared towards solving problems around chore efficiency. Uh,
Oh, sorry.
yeah, so while solving problems for producers is a big focus with the farmers first flavor of where we want funding to go. Many of our projects in part of solving a problem for a producer is helping um, integrate wildlife habitat into an agricultural operation or on um, parts of that operation that aren't necessarily used to crop. So with that said, the outcome measures are defined by the partner. The partner is the expert. The partner has the teammates who have the modeling tool that they're going to use to say, this is a benchmark condition that we want to measure and improve by the end of the project. So while maybe the long-term impacts of improving wildlife habitat are not something that you can measure within 5 years, there is aspects that could be where a habitat is on a continuum of arriving at that target value, or is there corollary benefits to habitat being restored that affect economic factors such as reduced sediment that the county doesn't have to deal with dredging out of a slough. So we're looking to the partner with the local expertise to say this is the condition or of a wildlife habitat or something related that can benefit from the habitat. We're going to monitor it and report on what that change is to that condition at the end of 5 years. And that's what we're looking for in a proposal, that idea.
That's right. And at the basis of the science fair projects of our elementary and high school years, the better we are at documenting those baseline conditions of what exists right now. We implemented a few $100,000, a few $1 million worth of conservation. And then what is the new condition? Outcomes are just simply the change in those conditions. Obviously, we would love to see very long-term monitoring continue. That is why we are in a partnership. We hope that you get excited about this work and can find funding after we move on from the partnership to continue long-term monitoring. But for the sake of our program, we're really just looking for the change in those baseline conditions. So the better you are at monitoring the baseline and the change, the easier it is to describe your outcomes, for us at least. Okay. If watersheds cover more than one CCA, is that an issue? Mike, would you like that one?
I mean, it's not an issue, but this is how your project needs to be focused on one CCA. So there is very little overlap in any of the CCAs. But if you are in an area where there is some overlap of those CCAs, you have to pick one and pick the one that's most aligned with the priority resource concerns of what you're trying to accomplish. And know that when you're dealing with CCAs, you're not limited to the resource concerns, the priority resource concerns. You just have to address at least one priority resource concern with that CCA. So just keep that in consideration, and you do have to pick just one. And the other piece of it is, and this goes for all CCAs, is your project boundary must be wholly within that CCA. You can't have a little county in a CCA and 5 counties outside of the CCA, or even, a whole state outside the CCA. And that is not considered an eligible project area for the CCA.
That's right. So if you guys have a watershed that is extending past the CCA boundary, you would want to select the state multi-state pool instead of the CCA funding pool for that particular issue. Or if you are going to try to focus on that CCA priority resource concern, then you might want to shrink your boundary down if you want to compete in the CCA. But it sounds like the question might have been geared towards more of a watershed approach and less on a CCA. However, some of our CCAs are watersheds, and as a native North Carolinian, I will speak to the Mississippi not quite covering the lovely New River. So any of you looking for a fun vacation this summer, the New River is absolutely gorgeous, and it does flow into the Mississippi, but it is not included in that CCA. So in that case, if you wanted to work on the New River, you might actually, or near where I grew up, you might actually want to choose the state multi-state. I realize it's confusing. And certainly if you need additional coaching, cannot state enough, contact your state coordinator. Okay, so just to justify for clarity, for easement projects, both AFA and Classic, TAI is eligible for the lead partner for project coordinations specific for the easement projects. Again, before I put this over to my colleague, I will plug again, July the 9th is when we're going to be hosting our easement component of our CPP. Mike, would you like to answer that one?
Yes. So the TA that a partner is eligible for is primarily TAE. The overall entire RCPP project management, project outreach, project outcomes assessment reporting. There's very little, if any, TAI that's ever actually eligible for an entity to charge for an entity held easement.
Thanks, Mike. What will change because of the acres treated? Doesn't that necessitate research and monitoring, but research is not funded by the program? Eric, would you like that one?
Sure. No, we don't need research, but what we're looking for is that there is a defined problem. There's existing data that says this is a problem. And it's a problem that can be addressed with natural resources conservation service, conservation work. So by having data, there's lots of data out there. There may be already existing academic study in a particular area. Lots of projects come to us where they say, local university has been studying this problem, and they show that there's this much sedimentation caused by this farming activity. And we want to do these practices to address that. So that is benchmark data. And that same way that data was measured would be used to measure what changed at the end of the project. So it doesn't have to be full-on research. You might turn to an academic source for a tool that's published, that was developed by research to use to measure your benchmark and the changes to that benchmark from your project activities.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Okay. Will AGI waivers for producers and cooperators once again be an option to apply for under this RCPP? Yes. During the negotiation phase, once you've been awarded as a project recipient, the state will work with you during those negotiations following the announcement of the project award. So this is afterwards. You can then request a waiver of AGI provisions. So again, anyone that doesn't understand AGI, that stands for adjusted gross income. And Congress sets a limit on what federal dollars can go to what gross income level. So if you are trying to work on a big project area and accomplish great things, and you have a few folks in there that are exceptionally wealthy or have high incomes, and we're talking about wildlife corridors, or we're talking about watersheds, or we're talking about vegetation that really doesn't recognize those ranch and land, privately held landowners as a true boundary, you can request a waiver for those AGI requirements or provisions for the entire RCPP project. And that is something we recommend, so that even if a producer comes in later with a higher income than expected, you do not have to chase that individual waiver each time. Congress does allow us to waive that for the purpose of accomplishing those great outcomes in those specific geographic boundaries. So we recognize that EQIP can sometimes limit what we can accomplish, and this is us trying to do more together. And it is one of the great advantages of being an RCPP program awardee. So thank you for that question. Can the implementation of conservation practices on public lands be counted as a partner contribution in an AFA? Eric, would you like that one?
Okay. The financial assistance of conservation activities on federal land that is a part of a producer's operation is fair game. So if a producer, say they're grazing, they have a ranch and they have a grazing lease that's also on federal land, then we can fund conservation activities that are necessary to address the operation impacts on the natural resources. But we cannot augment other public agencies' budgets, federal agencies' budgets, to do work other than what I described that's benefiting an eligible producer's operation. There are some cases where public land, such as land owned by an irrigation district or the state, that has infrastructure that needs improvements in order to support participation of producers in the program to implement conservation work, that is public land that could have financial assistance money used to make those infrastructure improvements to benefit the eligible producers.
Thank you, Eric. And Mike, I know you also represent us out west, so would you like to add anything to that as well?
Oh, Eric did a great job.
Okay, great. Just checking. How many people in an organization can operate in the portal? Infinite amount of people in an organization. We recognize some of our partners out there. You have a very, very wide geographic blueprint. You have personnel operating in every state. The amount of participants on the partnership side is infinite. So we certainly welcome your participation in the portal. And our states will assist you with the needs there. There are some limitations once we go into agreement on what you can do in the portal. But you can add as many people in your organization as you would like to our portal. So thank you very much. All right, under the RCPP AFA, do partners need to have job approval authority for the practices included in the RCPP and planned and certified with producers? Mike, would you like that one?
Yeah, so for AFA projects, partners are expected to have qualifications and capacity to deliver the technical assistance for that financial assistance that's then going to meet NRCS standards. But JAA, planner certification, those types of things are not required. And I'll go in and talk about Classic a little bit as well. So those requirements of job approval authority and planner certification are also not required for Classic, depending on what technical services they're providing. So in because the classics go through producer contracts, through our systems, through all of our processes, we do require them to follow the same sort of processes as equip. However, you can work that out in negotiation with, well, maybe the partner doesn't have JA, but they're going to do the work and it's checked by NRCS. Really, it just comes down to what's negotiated. And JA planner certifications, those are easy things to tie to if partners have them, to show qualifications and to get things checked off quickly. But it's not a end all if the partner does not have those things for either classic or AFA.
Thanks, Mike. Eric, did you have anything to add on that one?
No, Mike covered it all.
Okay, great. Our state multi-state projects and our critical conservation area separate pools of money, and are there dollars allocated predetermined? Yes, they are separate. And the statute requires a 50-50 split between the state and multi-state and the CCA funding pools. So when you think about the 310 million, there will be, just divide that by 2. That is what we mean by the 50-50 split. Each project is fully funded through one or the other. So state, multi-state, or critical conservation areas. So projects that are funded in a CCA and use those CCA funds must have all project activities. That means land management, entity held easements, etc. Address at least one of the CCA priority resource concerns. And you're like, what are those? You can always Google them. CCA priority resource concerns, NRCS, RCPP, and that will bring up that particular page and show you what those are. It is one of the critical decisions that you need to make before applying, is where do I want to put my hat in the ring? And there are some restrictions when it comes to CCA, but that is Congress's way to try to focus some funds on some of those larger national challenges that seem to be very difficult to overcome. So the Mississippi River Basin is one that we've been working on for a very long time. Those are some of those long-term critical conservation areas will take multiple careers for us to potentially solve, but we are always happy to be seeing progress made on those. And if you're outside of one of those, it's also, we consider that 50-50, equally important for you to design your project and your geographic boundary as you see fit to accomplish those outcomes. So thank you for that question. All right. Can a lead partner eligibility of a for-profit led AFA be verified prior to the application deadline? Mike, would you like that one?
Sure. I suggest that you just review the list of eligible partners that are in the NFO and the statute. For-profit companies can qualify in some instances with under one or more of those listed eligible entities, maybe in particular history of working collaboratively with partners. As far as verified prior to application deadline, I think the best way to go about this is to, if you're not sure if you meet if you're eligible, meet with your state coordinator, make sure they understand your business model, where you think you fit, and then if they have concerns or questions, they can come to us at headquarters for a little bit of additional clarity. And just that needs to just make that part of your discussions as part with the state conservationist and other staff that you're working with, in order to make sure you got a good proposal there.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, did I understand correctly that the AFA contract implementation is actual cost? Or can an AFA use a regional cost list? Eric, would you like that one?
Yeah, we're not holding anybody to a cost list. What we are looking for is the actual cost to deliver the conservation practice standards equivalents on producers' land, comparable to the rates that we typically pay. So that our state level cost lists are just a starting point to say, this is what NRCS typically pays. And we're looking for the partner to identify what the real costs would be that are reasonable and defensible. So if you have a regional cost list, which I don't know where that would come from, that might be a starting point for a partner to propose a particular rate that would be paid for delivering a conservation practice standard. And we'll evaluate that from a perspective, is it comparable to what NRCS typically pays, reasonable and defensible.
Thank you, Eric. And one of the ways we like to also describe reasonable and defensible is you can have a qualified bid process. You can utilize that project-based expenses. So we don't really want to be in a situation where we're just going to one particular contractor. We do like to make sure that those funds are fair as they can be. So thank you. Can you discuss best practices for proposing a pay-for-performance AFA? Eric, do you want that one? Or Mike is actually
I'll
in here. So
jump on that.
Okay.
The way the pay for performance hit originally in the regulation focused on that being coming from the perspective of a partner contribution to what NRCS pays for the implementation of a practice. But it has been interpreted ever since RCP existed as an alternative pathway to paying for conservation. So the way it's been able to work within the program and all the statutory requirements on how we spend money is that a pay for performance would be a way of paying for the outcome of implementing a conservation practice based on the amount of improvement it made in lieu of paying for the cost of installing the practice. And that is how pay for performance has been successfully implemented in some projects around the country.
Thanks. Mike, do you need to add anything to that one?
Nope.
Okay.
Great answer, Eric.
Great. I'll let you take this next one. Are there any rules on RCPP lead partners submitting a proposal to, quote, continue or expand a current RCPP that's beginning to wind down, but has been successful? Can you just apply to extend the current project?
So you cannot just apply to extend the current project unless we make a renewal opportunity available. And for FY26, we have not and will not be making a renewal opportunity available. And so if you're interested in quote unquote continuing a project that's winding down, you do need to put in a new proposal as if it's a new project. But by all means, in that proposal should describe your successes, should describe how you're building on your past successes. And some of the questions are actually worded towards allowing partners or encouraging partners to be able to describe those things. So it is considered a new proposal. It could be the same project boundary. It could be expanded project boundary. It could be the watershed next door. That's really partner determined. But make sure that you're describing how it is a continuation and you're building on that success in your description in those narrative responses.
Thanks, Mike. And certainly want to put a shout out to those partners that might be thinking about scaling a successful project that they have done with state funds and have not ever applied to RCPP before. We certainly look the same to those levels of success. We recognize any project that has gone through a trial phase and been successful in implementing and achieving outcomes as an opportunity to apply. So we'd love to see both. If you've worked and had some success somewhere, please tell us about it. Please tell us why how you think it's going to be able to scale, or why you might want to double down and focus even harder on that particular geographic location. So we love to build on success. Right, so we have a tribal reservation question out here that does not have any critical conservation areas overlapping it. I assume that means only state funding can apply. Mike, would you like to start with that one?
Sure, that is correct. If the reservation doesn't exist within ACCA, it would only be eligible to apply for the multi-state fund pool.
Thanks. Eric, anything to add there?
Nope.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, are there restrictions on proposing a project that has previously been funded through RCPP Classic? Mike, would you like that one?
No, just try to see what you can do to address, maybe need to make some changes to be more competitive with the way that the current NFO and the priorities are stated, and try it. What we do, I guess, what I will, kind of not sure exactly what the intent of the questions is. If you got an RCPP Classic that has been funded and you just want to add to it on the same footprint, probably wouldn't recommend that until you get closer to the end. But there are no restrictions.
Okay, thanks, Mike. All right, I have a question here about the portal. Are there organizational roles within the portal? Not sure what you mean by that, but you would be given permissions as a partner. And obviously, if you have hierarchy within your organization, you might want to think about that in some of your internal processes. But no, we don't actually have separate roles that your organizational employees might hold. So a lower, I don't want to say lower, because honestly, when I was admin, I felt like I had to do all the things. So if you have certain roles that you have in your organization, such as finance or something like that, you will not have any you will not see any differentiation in your portal permission as a partner. And again, you can have as many you gain access to the portal by signing up with e-authorizations. And I don't know if I said this before, but we really do recommend that when you get your e-authorization, you use a personal email. We have had folks come to us and they had signed in with their e-auth through their work account and they left their work. And so you can take your e-auth with you if something comes up and you have to leave that job. You get to bring that with you. So, but only if you use your personal email when you do that. So I just wanted to kind of use this opportunity with this question about the portal to plug away at using your personal email and not your work email when you get that e-auth. Now, obviously, if your organization out there and you no longer want a person to have permission to access that particular project, we can certainly turn that off. But you can take your e-authorization with you. So right. Someone has read the NOFO. They are coming down to all the way down to page 18. From the NOFO, page 18, expenditures for project development activities such as producer recruitment and engagement by RCPP project partners between the time of project selection and agreement execution may be counted as partner contributions if the proposal budget identifies the expenditures and NRCS approves them when the project is selected. Can you give me an example of this? Does this mean the time between proposals submitted and selection? Mike, would you like that one?
Yes. Okay, so an example, I'm going to actually address the second question first. Does this mean the time between proposals submitted and selection? And no, that's not what it means. What it means is from the time of selection to the time that we actually have an executed partnership agreement. So let's say that we make announcement of our new awards in early, or let's say we make the announcement in October. Then the next step is to work to negotiate our consolidated agreement that'll consist of both our PPA and any appropriate supplemental agreements that need to be in there. And let's say that takes us 2 months. And so we execute those agreements in mid-December. Any of the time, any work that's done by the partner for in the project negotiation, let's say you're doing some grassroots efforts out on the land, trying to drum up participation in anticipation of a sign up in the spring, any of those things that you're doing, as long as they're able to be or put in the proposal as a contribution line item in the budget and make it into the PPA, meaning, by NRCS approval means it's in the final PPA that we execute with you as the partner, from the time that our chief makes that announcement of selected projects in October to December can be counted as contribution. Now, don't hold those dates on us. Those are just example dates, but that's what that means as far as the time frame that we're talking about, and kind of gives you some examples of things that could be counted towards contribution in that time frame.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to use that as our opportunity for our last question because it was long. It had multi-components to it. And just to say that there are a few questions like that we have not had a chance to answer because we wanted to try to keep things simple while we were doing this for 2 hours, and we are at the 2-hour mark. So if you did not get to your lovely question, it will be included in the frequently asked questions that we will release. We do thank you for adding that in. It will allow us an opportunity to give it greater consideration offline, and we will get that answered as soon as we possibly can. I wanted to thank each and every one of you for hanging in there. 209 are still with us all the way to the end. So we are very excited that you are still here with us and showing some engagement in our program. And we are very excited to read these wonderful proposals that you're going to bring to us here in a couple of months. Again, we love to take pride in our customer service out to you as a national team and as our state workers out there. We want to help you bring together the best projects possible. So do not hesitate to reach out to us. We really do encourage you to start at the state level, but should something need to elevate, we are more than happy to assist any way we can. We are thrilled that this is out there and released, and we are very excited to be on here with you today. So thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful 4th of July. Be safe out there with your fireworks. And I don't want to go over because we have a World Cup match here coming up at 5 p.m. That some of you may be eager to go sit and watch. So thanks very much for joining us, and we will see you hopefully July the 9th for those of you that would like to talk about easements. So thank you so much, everyone. Take care.